steady flow of attacks on our election results and state leaders having a huge impact on Georgia politics. That could be a factor in the recent slide in Governor Brian Kemp's overall approval rating. Our exclusive 11 Alive Survey USA poll shows 45% of respondents disapprove of the job the governor is doing and just 12% strongly approve. And those numbers are not that surprising considering the steady stream of hostility directed at the governor from President Trump since losing the election. They range from tweets urging the governor to break the law and overthrow the legal votes of hundreds of thousands of Georgia voters to threats of backing other candidates when Kemp is up for re-election in a couple of years. And that's something Governor Kemp addressed this morning.
As far as me getting primaried, I could care less about that right now. The biggest thing we all need to do, regardless of what you think about what's been going on in Georgia, we've got to support David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler.
And despite the flood of angry criticism, Governor Brian Kemp publicly remains a staunch supporter of President Trump, even tweeting photographs from the recent White House Christmas party he attended.